Hi, I'm Ali Patterson. On this episode, we're looking at data. For this, we headed out to Malaysia to look at the country as a region for setting up centres, including construction of a new centre in Johor. Saul Judah from Gartner talks to us about data management, and Chris Popple from RBS talks to us about securing data. But first, we speak with Wa'am Mohammed from MDeC about what is required for a data centre. So I've come to Malaysia to speak with MDeC about data centres.
The demand of data center will be growing for the next 5 years. Reason being, companies or enterprises are starting to undergo a digital transformation. That means the focus is more on the core competencies of the businesses. Whereas the ICT, the back end, the data management has to be outsourced to the third parties. As the business grow, then that means they want to contain the cost of IT. That they have to find a way on how to siphon the cost of IT to other organizations and reap the best value out of it. So as they undergo that kind of transformation, so this is where the opportunities for the data center players would come in. Need for data center players to move up the value chain, because it's no longer about the leasing of the space, it's about offering the high value services. Companies are looking for something on the cloud, pay per use kind of thing. No longer that they are going to invest on the capex and opex of some white elephant infrastructure that doesn't create value to the businesses. So as long as it gives the best value out of it, then this is where the companies start to outsource their IT requirements, their IT services, and this is where the opportunities for data players to tap on.
With the huge amounts of data banks have, managing it effectively becomes critical. I spoke with Saul Judah from Gartner to find out how banks can do this. What should a bank look to do to sort of start to manage their data a lot more effectively?
Banks are facing quite interesting challenges these days. They're not only facing the requirements to meet regulations, to deliver value to the customers and to grow, as has always been the case, but they're also facing threats from a variety of different competitors that they didn't expect. So smaller companies that don't need to meet the regulations in the same way as banks do, companies that are going under the radar, are actually challenging banks in many ways. So banks are now looking at innovating rather than innovating on their product. They're also looking at innovating on information. So they're far more focused on looking at information as an asset and creating value through information and using information to drive new business models than they ever have been in the past. So I'm seeing new ways of differentiating with creating new products of differentiation through things like personalized products, focusing on specific needs and making the products that they're offering very specific to the individuals. And that requires vast amounts of information. It requires new processes and new frameworks to think about information, and then therefore driving the need to have far better information management. Banks can't differentiate on whether their current account is better than the next bank anymore. They have to look at something quite different. They have to look at how they can innovate with their information and create some value that the customers and the market truly needs.
Many organisations choose to move their servers to a specialist facility, the data centre. This provides security, efficiency and backups. Lots of servers generate lots of heat, so they need to be kept cool, which can be very expensive. An estimated 5% of Europe's energy bill is for data centres, which has led many organisations to look elsewhere to set up their centres. I was lucky enough to be given a tour around a site for a new centre in the region of Johor in southern Malaysia. We've come to Sadaq Industrial Park to look at an area of land that's been marked to be built for data centres. We were lucky enough to be given a tour of a section of land in the Iskandar region. When looking at the requirements for a data center location, we look for costs of infrastructure such as electricity. EPRI states that for every watt of computer power consumed by a data center, it takes another watt to cool it. The sector we were given a tour of had very close proximity to power lines, and with an average cost of between 7 and 14 cents per kilowatt hour, compared to 22 in the UK, the savings could be massive.
So this is where all your financial data is eventually going to be stored. Out there.
Land survey. So now we are somewhere around here. So we are following this route.
Okay.
This is right.
With an area of 100 acres approximately under construction, the site was making excellent progress. The proximity to Singapore, only a very short distance away, makes the region of Johor an ideal location for setting up a data center.
This is where we took the land, where we cut the hill and bring the land down to our backfield area. It's quite very distant. It's quite distant.
When setting up a data center, you have to look at cost-effective bandwidth, power, local infrastructure. How does Malaysia sort of cater for this?
Certainly, those are the key infrastructure that has to be put in place to ensure successful rollout of any data center part or any data center location in anywhere in any part of the world. We know that in terms of connectivity, even though we are not that advanced as compared to Singapore and Hong Kong, but we are taking the right steps to get ourselves ready to serve the needs of the market. In terms of connectivity and broadband, our government has put in place a program where they want to roll out a high-speed broadband access to the entire nation. So that would cater the requirements of the citizen and the businesses in Malaysia as far as getting to the broadband access. And on the other hand, we are also integrating what we call a national plan, where we want to build up a high-capacity international gateway to cater the expected influx of the data that will come into Malaysia if we want to position Malaysia as a data hub. Because we know in the next 10 years, we are expecting about a few tens of terabytes of data that will come to Malaysia, and we know that existing capacity wouldn't be able to meet that requirements. So in the medium term and in the long term, we are putting the resources to put up the right capacity for us to fulfill the needs of the data coming into Malaysia. So we take some time, but I think we are in the right direction, in the right timeline for us to be able to meet the requirements of the investors. So we work closely with our partners, with Malaysian Communication and Multimedia Commission, our regulator, to work with the telco players to put in their plan, as part of their business plan, to put the need to expand the network, both local network as well as international network. So the plan is in place. In the short term, what we are doing now is we are connecting all the existing data centers in Cyberjaya. Cyberjaya is natural hub for a data center, which has been in place for the past 10 years. We have a few global data center in Cyberjaya, and we have a few local data center players in Cyberjaya, where we have put in place what we call inter-data center connectivity to reduce the cost of connecting all the data center in Cyberjaya. So that is a short-term measure that we are putting in place to make sure that we can reduce the cost of the bandwidth, and hence we can attract more customers to come to Cyberjaya. But the plan is obviously to roll out this kind of mechanism, this kind of connectivity, inter-DC connectivity, to other places as well in Malaysia. Whenever that we have a good pool or clusters of data center in a particular location, then we're going to have economy of scale for us to build that kind of infrastructure. In terms of power, in terms of cost of the power, cost of energy in Malaysia, we are one of the cheapest in the region. So, because we have a good supply of power. We do generate a lot of power. That means we can maintain and manage the cost of the power to be one of the cheapest in the region. But we as the industry grows, I think we will face the challenges of power shortages. I mean, maybe next 10 to 15 years if we don't do anything. So that is why we are starting to promote the renewable energy to our local players. I mean, we leave it to the industry to come up with certain standards so that they can be prepared to start investing in the renewable energy, because as we move along, perhaps in the future the subsidy from the government is no longer there. That means the cost would become higher because as a result of lifting of the subsidy by the government. Because the government cannot keep on subsidizing the power rate forever. It must come to a stop. And when that moment comes, which means that the operators, the provider must be prepared to think of other way on how to on energy usage and consumption. So that's why renewable energy is a long-term plan that we are looking in, while we are still having a lowest power cost in the region, but the industry has to start thinking about investing in the renewable energy so that they can sustain their operation for the next 10 or 15 years to come.
One of the biggest concerns that consumers have around their data is the security aspect. When I spoke with Chris Popple, one of the areas we talked about was safety of consumer data.
One of the most important things is actually customer education. So no amount of barriers that we can put in front of technology and whatnot can get around the fact that, and sometimes it's really easy to fool a customer. So we're talking about traditional con artists who can, either by calling you or sending you an email, can convince you that that person is actually from the bank, and you then volunteer a piece of your information. So we spend an awful lot of time with our own customers, but then also with the government and with other banks to educate when is it really important to keep your own information safe, how to recognize scammers and fraudsters. And we spend the majority of our time doing that. There's also some really important pieces of software and technology that we use to monitor, and antivirus software and so forth. But what we're finding is that customer education is by far the most effective vehicle to making sure that customers keep their own data safe. We do definitely have a big data center, and particularly our most sensitive data is kept, in, imagine not just one place, but many places with whole, layers of security in it. And we also use cloud data services, and they are incredibly useful, particularly for ease of access, to help us do things very, very quickly. But of course, we'd use our head when deciding what kind of data in what place, and what kind of level of access. So, rest assured, it is safe. But again, what really matters is it's the not the brick walls of the technology, but it's individuals' education that matters the most. And there's no amount of, we could do it if we could do it every day over and over again. It probably wouldn't be enough. It's just we need to find ways to get it into customers' minds. We need to be careful about what they do with their own data.
Data centers have to not only ensure that information is secure, they also have to be energy efficient and to be able to serve a varied and a global client base, making location key. I asked what was on the horizon for the region of Johor.
We were there earlier this week having a look at part of the region, but can you tell us a little bit about the region of Johor?
Yeah, Johor is a strategic location for the new investments. When government announced what we call Iskandar region in the southern part of Malaysia, which is situated in Johor, the objective was then to attract new investments in the high value services. And obviously, close proximity to Singapore is another key advantage just that we want to leverage on. Because we know Singapore is a center, or is a headquarters of global services companies. So we recognize that there is a need to have a new emerging regional economic corridors that would be suitable to serve the requirements of the existing multinational in Singapore whenever they decide to expand. So specifically for this thing, we are positioning Johor or Iskandar, Malaysia as a new data center hub where we want to focus our resources and investments to make it as an attractive location for the investors who want to invest in data center facilities. So it is a new exciting place, and in fact we have early of this year we have launched what we call a Sedenat Iskandar Data Hub. It's a 700-acre area where we want to focus on the investments of related to data center industry. So this is an area that we are focusing at the moment. As a start, obviously we have in mind to grow this area into a bigger place whenever we have the right traction and right attraction from the relevant investors. But I think it provides a good start for us to really position Johor as a location.
On the next FinTech Finance, we continue our theme around data and speak with Nexidia, RBS and RSA around using data to enhance the customer experience.